Live. Hey family, it's Friday.
What's up?
And Janelle, I'm just going to apologize on her behalf. She's not wearing lipstick today, and she brought up
He
to me.
didn't tell me we were going to be this close.
And so she's like, I didn't wear lipstick. You look great. Okay, doesn't she
I
look fine?
want people to know I take all this seriously.
Tell her she doesn't need lipstick.
Just bring your brains.
That's why you're here anyway, not for your
Right.
lips. Hope you're having a great day today. It is Friday. We got a tough one to discuss with you, and it ties to our latest podcast episode, which I think this over time will either be a preview or a follow-up, depending on when you watch this. It'll fit perfectly for both. But our podcast deals with a really difficult issue today. Tell them.
Oh,
that,
yes.
that was your
It's
cue.
Wow. Yeah, so we're following up on the discussion we had last week on the pastor who very sadly committed suicide, had been struggling with mental illness for years, was even an advocate for mental illness. But his close friend said that he thinks that people who struggle with mental illness should not be in church leadership. And so I guess the discussion is, do we agree?
Yeah,
with that?
and is that a road we want to go down to say that
Yeah.
people struggling with mental illness shouldn't be in church leadership? Because there's no doubt, as we're going to post this article, by the way, you can see it just popped up in our comment stream here. Thank you to our fearless leader,
Deborah.
Josh.
And thank you,
for
Deborah.
that.
She did. I just want to
Yeah.
acknowledge.
Deborah, yes.
Oh my
Deborah
God.
commented that you are beautiful just the way you are.
Thank you. That takes a lot of pressure off. Thanks.
Okay, so our podcast episode deals with the lament about the loss of Pastor Jared Wilson, but his good friend Dale Partridge wrote some pretty, I think, controversial words.
Yeah, especially yeah.
So he's a pastor and house church planter and a, quote, true friend of late California pastor Jared Wilson. He says that Wilson had expressed a desire to step down from his high-pressure role as an associate pastor before his suicide. Partridge argues that it's reckless and unbiblical for churches to put someone in a position of leadership who's struggling mentally or has serious doubts about their faith. Quote, as we have all watched, this was online, he put this, men who are placed in shepherding roles at church are committing suicide and public apostasy at an alarming frequency. These men did not have secret struggles either. Nearly all of these recent tragedies were carried out by men who openly confessed their mental illness and doubts of doctrine. The million-dollar question is, why are churches placing men who are so candid about their current brokenness in positions of leadership? The Bible gives us very clear instructions regarding the qualifications of a shepherd in the church. They call for a man to be sober-minded, self-controlled, doctrinally sound, disciplined, tested holy. Church is not accepting or tolerant or understanding or compassionate to hire a man to shepherd a flock of God's people who's openly struggling with mental illness. It's unbiblical, it's reckless, it's dangerous, and we're seeing it's an easy target for the enemy to rain down national tragedy on the church. Now, he went on a little bit further, but he wasn't without his critics in this. And here's what I mean by that. Dr. Therese, and she is a
licensed psychologist.
there you go, a licensed Christian clinical psychologist. And she said that his comments were a place of ignorance. She says, Dale, as a clinical psychologist and Christian who has faithfully served in ministry, I say that I think this post comes from a place of ignorance and furthers mental health stigma. In the U.S., almost half of all adults will experience a mental illness in their lifetime. That's because we live in a broken world. The church doesn't need perfect pastors because they don't exist. They need pastors who are connected to God, love people, do the work needed to be healthy, including getting help, and who will recognize their own humanness and imperfection. I implore you to gain more wisdom in the area of mental health and consider how detrimental your false teaching is for the church. With all due respect, safety for the church means acknowledging that you and your judgmental, shaming, stigmatizing words are wrong. So we got one guy saying it's unbiblical to allow someone in church leadership who is struggling with mental illness, and someone else saying that it's unbiblical to say that.
And I want to highlight that Jared is actually, no, not Jared. The pastor or the leader who made the statement was actually a good friend.
Yeah, they talked like a week before he took his own life.
And you had mentioned his concern about the funeral he was in, like days before he committed suicide. And it was on a woman, the funeral was a woman who had committed suicide.
Yeah.
And just his concern about somebody struggling with things like this and the positions it puts him in. and just his vulnerability in that area. Part of me is like, where do you draw the line? Mental illness is a wide spectrum, and you could be taking medicine, or like someone said, you can be a pastor and be healthy and fine and then have a year where you're struggling.
Yeah, no, and because that's what this Christian psychologist brought up was seasons of struggle. But as much as I don't want mental health stigma. I don't want mental health problems because like half of adults go through this. I battle anxiety. I don't think that precludes us from leadership in ministry. However, isn't there wisdom in saying that if a pastor is dealing with clinical depression and struggling with suicidal thoughts, that maybe it's not the right season for leadership?
So then now you're getting specific. That's not mental illness. If he would have maybe worded it better and been more specific. There's people, for example, that suffer with bipolar that just, if they take medication. Right. And if you take medication, you're fine. Good morning, Leslie. I see you saying good morning. And Fred. Yeah. Sheila says, what makes mental illness worse than any other struggle? By that example, we should be near perfect to be in leadership, which is obviously not attainable.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that was the point of the Christian psychologist. But I'm still dealing with the gray area of the line of even, we don't know the circumstances of how he was chosen to officiate this. Did he volunteer or not? But I think it's unwise to have a pastor struggling with suicidal thoughts officiate the funeral of someone who committed suicide.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem unwise?
Yeah.
And if a pastor is dealing with the depths of depression to the point of suicidal thoughts, it's time for a sabbatical or leave of absence.
Yeah.
But to presume that you can just paddle through it, I just think it's unwise. And so I'm trying to figure out, they're both throwing the you're unbiblical thing at each other, these two people commenting about his suicide. I don't know that they're both unbiblical. Isn't there a place in the middle where they could both have some right things here? I do want to back up and comment that Yvonne also thinks that I look good.
She said you both look good.
Yeah.
Close up. It's like we're with you. I agree.
Thank you.
Because we want to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne.
Right. No, it's not. Wow, I'm so aggressive. So Mike said he wonders if Jonah struggled with mental illness as defined today.
Could be. And we know a bunch of the prophets would go off and just be like, oh, this is horrible.
Jeremiah probably, like, goodness gracious. Betty says, as someone who loves someone with mental illness, I do have to say I'd be very concerned about a leadership role unless there's a system in place to check and monitor their situation. Yeah. Kathy says, mental illness is not a sin. It's not different than diabetes, adultery, alcoholism, divorce. Read qualifications. Well, it's not a sin. Yeah.
No, Kathy, you bring up such an important point. Mental illness is not a sin. We talk about this on the show all the time. We're so passionate about this, that healthy people get mental health care, and people who are struggling get mental health care. Counseling, psychiatric care, all those things. Getting treated for depression and anxiety and all this. That is what normal, healthy, biblical people do. You're not sinning if you're depressed.
Yeah.
Not at all. And there's no pat biblical answer to fix it. Sometimes God, just like when you break your leg, He wants you to go to see an orthopedist. And when your mind is struggling, He wants you to go see a psychiatrist or a counselor. All that's true. But Kathy, I'm also, I understand what this pastor is saying, that there is this line at which if you're battling in the depths of depression, a pastor is someone who gives to a flock and shepherds and leads a flock.
Yeah.
I'm not saying fire him, but somebody around him ought to go, you need to step away. Let's work through this and bring healing before we bring restoration to your ministry work. I think that was his point, but he did make it sound like, in the article, you'll see in the comments if you scroll up, we posted the article, I think he made it sound like if you're struggling with mental health, get out of the pastorate. I don't think that's what he meant. Do you? Maybe he did.
I don't think so, but Callie says she's concerned that would make them hurt themselves, just that message. But then my concern is also maybe it would stop people from sharing and being transparent, especially since it's a gray area. So let's say you're not suicidal and you're just struggling with depression. Maybe it would make you stop and question, should I even share that I'm struggling with this? My issue is the lack of specificity because mental illness covers so many struggles. Yvonne says, I agree because they're not mentally capable to take care of themselves, much less as far as being in leadership of others.
Yeah, and again, I think it's important to emphasize, Yvonne, that it's a season.
Which is what Kathy's saying. Maybe take a break, but not disqualify.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying fire people for mental. That sends the wrong message to fire somebody for having a struggle with mental health. If we are people who restore and are made new, then we need to model that in every aspect of what we do things, and we should seek restoration.
So where would you put the line?
I don't know if I could draw one.
Or draw.
Can you? Can you draw a line in this?
Maybe say if you've had suicidal thoughts.
I think that could be a line, but I don't want to make, because that's so extreme. Someone could still be in the depths of depression without suicidal thoughts and be not in a good season for leadership.
Yeah.
I think that almost calls for the... I had a pastor, Dr. Dale Griffin from Chicago, who said he thought that all pastors should be in counseling all the time.
Wow.
I know it's like a lot to say, but like someone to, since they're givers and shepherds, that they have to have someone checking their mental health on a regular basis. And so I think he may have a point in this, where Dr. Griffin is just saying, look, this is a difficult thing. You better be plugged in to mental health. And that alone will allow someone to not have to draw a line. A counselor could go, you're in a season, you need a break.
I like that.
And I can't draw a line and say you've met these qualifications. I can just sense it.
Deborah says the line has to be made in conversation with any church board and the person involved, and of course prayer with God.
Yeah.
Kathy, anyone who works with people struggles with burnout. Moses got weary and people held him up.
Good point, Kathy.
Susan, I haven't seen you in a while. She says you cannot lead out of a place of brokenness, only wholeness. I would suggest humbling yourself and getting help before trying to help others. You cannot give away what you do not have. Really, I mean, I get the point, but is that true? I mean, is it... Because we're always broken.
We're always spiritually broken, but I mean, I think she's pointing to that depth of depression where you...
Okay, the more...
okay. She's talking about humbling yourself, and I agree with her. I think we can recognize this and should, through prayer and counsel, recognize this ourselves. But it's going to take the rest of us ensuring that pastors and leaders know that mental health problems are not a sin.
Yeah.
If we don't make this a regular part of our conversation, when we're not just talking about help me to stop with this physical sin, but help me with my thought life, help me with my spiritual struggles, like if we are not sending that message, we're forcing pastors into silence because they're afraid you're going to fire them or something.
Yeah, exactly. So would we widen this then to, let's say, teachers? They're in a way they're shepherding children or college students. You know, is that thinking then the same? You shouldn't. I don't know. I don't know if we should we go there.
Well, I mean, I think there's a parallel here. I remember when I was I was a number of years into teaching, and when there was one of my students in 9th grade was diagnosed, this beautiful young girl, Danielle, diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. A year later, I'm teaching in my class. I get a knock on the door, and it's a school nurse and a guidance counselor. And I was like, what are you doing here? They said, Brian, come here. And they pulled me in the hallway to tell me that she passed away. And they said, if you want a minute and you don't think you can teach right now, you know, let us know and we'll get someone to cover for you. And I was like, I'm sad, but I'm fine. I'll be all right. And I went in the classroom. I started the next class period. I couldn't do it.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
How could I, like you were saying, even as a teacher, how could I give to this group of students when I have nothing left? Mourning the loss of this student who I knew well, who died that day, and I just discovered this, and students are hurting. So I had to do what Susan indicated. I had to humble myself, pick up the phone and go, you said I could get out of here. I need to get out of here. I need help. Send somebody. And I just left. And I went down to the guidance office, and I tried to get myself together and pray and deal with that. So I think you're right. There is this level at which we have to have this constant communication with others, but also with ourselves to know I can't keep giving. For my own mental health, I've got to stop.
Darcy says 1 in 5 Americans have mental illness. Church leadership is slim as it is, and eliminating those with mental health conditions would tax those resources. Never mind the fact that it just perpetuates stigma and will keep people who need help silent.
Amen.
Mental illness should not be thought of as a lack of prayer if medication's needed. You wouldn't tell someone who wears glasses to take them off before driving to just pray and see God bless all. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, Darcy, preach. You said that perfectly well. We stand right next to you on that. And the glasses one makes a lot of sense. I can't pray that I'd be able to read your comments from here like this.
Yeah.
Because I can't, even if I squint. And so the same is true when you need mental health care. But I'm assuming, Darcy, you'd also agree with us that there is some sort of line where you can't be in a position of leadership because you don't have the capacity in the midst of your mental health struggle. Just like you take a leave of absence if you have surgery. Just like, like Ron had a hip replacement a number of months ago. He had to be out of work for a while. There's nothing wrong with that, and it makes sense because he can't do his job in the midst of that. And I think someone who's shepherding or leading can't do their job in the midst of the depths of depression. So we ought to give them the same thing. Go, look, we know you're not sinning. Let's get you healed and bring you back.
Kat Turner is saying, yes, mental illness is just like any other illness, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, anorexia. The list goes on. I'm a mental health nurse.
Whoa.
And this world fears away from mental health, including the government, were when they want to cut corners, cost-wise. They decrease mental health benefits, including group homes, medications, assistance in facilities. Thank you. I wear contacts and glasses. Thanks for that analogy.
Yeah, no, it's a good one, isn't it? Like I can't have more faith and therefore see better.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have to treat mental illness the same way.
A lot of new people commenting. Joseph, thank you for your comment. He says, so where's the line between legitimately having a mental health issue and those people who will use it as a form of cop-out to shift blame away from themselves?
And see, here's the uncomfortable reality, Joseph. I like the question because this is always something we deal with. Because no matter what we do, because of sin, people will take advantage of situations. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, workers' comp.
Yeah.
People need it. Other people take advantage of it.
Oh, yeah.
So is the solution to get rid of workers' comp because some people are cheating? No. It's you deal with each case on an individual basis, and you still help people who need it, and you hold people accountable who are faking it. And that's why churches have boards and other staff and leadership to be able to assess the situation. And if someone's taking advantage of it, that's sin. Why? It's lying. Right?
Yeah.
It's lying, and lying is sinful. And so that's an easy one to take care of.
So in some situations, you don't have the option. So what do you do in terms of a mom that's struggling with depression? Or a dad?
Where you're saying, like, you can't get time off?
You can't, But
you can, though. It sounds crazy, but if someone,
Some people have to live with depression.
Well, of course, but we're talking about getting help, but there are levels at which you actually do need to be hospitalized.
Oh, well, yeah.
And there's acute danger tied to postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a moment where, you need to get away.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in getting help, immediate mental health care.
Yeah.
And the church stepping in, just like they would with a meal train or with caring for kids when someone's in a health crisis of a different kind.
Yeah. Mike says, but don't we all fall short of bearing one another's burdens with the mindset of it's their problem? We should come alongside to help those struggling.
Yeah. I agree.
Kathy, you don't willfully choose mental illness no more than you choose any other chronic illness.
That's
you
right.
can't will it away. You learn to live with it and take care of it. I just was going to say the glasses.
The glasses
part
thing.
too.
Well, people with glasses really are great, aren't they?
Yeah.
Janelle, sorry.
Of course.
You can't fully understand this.
No, can't. Paul
You and
says.
your perfect eyes.
Paul says no, but we can be supportive of the effort to get healing and help. God is the supreme healer.
But see, these conversations have not happened for decades. There's so long where people were thinking, mental health, meh, just pray more. Mm-hmm. Stop worrying. We created this problem, and only we can fix it in the church by having these kind of conversations.
Right. So, hello to Darcy and Mike and Kat. Chris, we haven't seen you in a while. He says he's noticed the healthiest minds in church leadership have a healthy stack of elders behind them to help disperse the load. So in terms of supporting those in leadership.
Great conversation.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, what we need to keep reminding people is that it's not a sin to struggle with mental health. And while prayer and faith and reading the scriptures are important, they aren't the magical fix to mental health issues. just like you need an orthopedist when you have a broken leg or an optometrist when you have eye problems, you need a mental health professional, a counselor, a psychiatrist when you're dealing with mental health issues. And they will help you get fixed. And we as a church need to remind everybody that those are not a problem of faith, but a problem of medicine that can be fixed.
I just want to pause before we go. And did you know it's Miss First Lady, Miss Anita Morrison's birthday?
Yeah, she shares a birthday with my wife, Sarah.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Is she with us right now, Miss Anita?
I hope so. If you're with us, let us know. Happy birthday to First Lady.
Anita Morrison.
Miss Anita Morrison, yes.
And happy birthday to my wife, Sarah. I love you, baby.
Ooh, yeah.
I love you, baby.
Yes, trusting God no matter what. I love the perspective of it's not just because of those he pastors, for example, the pastor who was struggling last week, but also for himself. Just his friend's concern on the pressure that it puts on a person that's struggling with mental illness. So it's about them too, not just about the people they shepherd. Asherita, look who's on.
Asherita Choo-Choo's here. Famous author.
Yeah. She says, good conversation. Why, thank you. I think we also need to stop celebrating excessive busyness in ministry. We can encourage our pastors and leaders to slow down and take time to rest.
We're hanging out with an author.
Hello.
Asherita.
Yeah, she's going to come next week, so stay tuned.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Rod says, I know a woman who was diagnosed as being bipolar. She also went through postpartum. She mothered 6 kids into adulthood that all were fairly balanced individuals.
That's right. There's help out there.
Yeah.
There's definitely help out there for those who need it.
Yeah.
And Christians ought to encourage people to get it. All right. Well, that does it for us today. Hiya, Asherita. It's fun. We got to go, guys. Have a great weekend. Don't forget our podcast deals with this tragic suicide of Pastor Jared Wilson. And some of you ministered to us that day. I'd really encourage you to go listen to that.
It drops at 10 o'clock, 30 minutes. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts.
Or our website. Make sure you rate us. It helps. And listen to the discussion on grief and mental health. And
you could even review it, too, if you want in there. Rating 5-star ratings are what we really need on those. That really helps our the algorithms and all of stuff. 5-star ratings. But also be like, wow, Brian, so profound.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, wow, Brian, you should listen to Janelle.
you could write that along with your 5 stars. All right. How about yourself? Not a Merry Little Christmas. You will have that eventually, but have a great day. God bless your family. We'll see you on Monday.